I'm an Aries and I need to start speaking my truth more, according to ChatGPT. Like, a lot of my mistakes were very public and painful, so it's very easily findable with when you search for me.
You should pick your people like your profit depends on it, because guess what, gym owner? It does.
I think in general, if a place does not work well as a gym, it will continue to not work well as a gym in the future. And you should bias for locations that are either new or my preferred, which is buying a successful gym.
Hello and welcome to Gym World Worldwide. I am your host today, Mateo Lopez. Joining me is my brother-in-arms, my compatriot, my business partner, my friend, the one and only John Edward Franklin. And today we have a very special episode where we are flipping it up. We're flipping the script. I am going to be interviewing our dear friend John and asking him about his journey through gym ownership. We're going to talk about the top 5 lessons learned while operating in this wonderful world that we call the gym world.
Well, this is new.
What's exciting is I know some of the answers to these questions. I was a junior partner on some of these gyms along the way. And some of these I don't know the answers to. So I will be learning them along with you. So I'm very excited to dig into the past and look at those skeletons in the closet. But before we get started, John, how are you?
I'm back in the great state of Florida, Teo. So I'm loving life.
That's great. Really happy to hear it. Maybe for the people who are just tuning in, maybe for the people who this is maybe their second or third episode, if you can, in your own words, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and when you decided to open a gym?
I'm an Aries and I need to start speaking my truth more, according to ChatGPT.
Sure, yeah.
I have a pretty typical CrossFit gym owner origin story. So I graduated college in 2009. I was a college athlete, kind of looking for that next thing to replace the team environment. Kind of stumbled into a CrossFit gym that was near my place of employment at the time. Fell in love with it, fell in love with the community, hated my job, decided this was what I wanted to do with my life. From there, sent a cold email out to Ben Bergeron and CJ Martin, basically asking like, hey, can I work for free, learn this business a little bit? I want to own my own. Ended up going and apprenticing, interning over at CrossFit Invictus for a little while before moving back to the East Coast with my now wife, because she got full-time employment in the New York City area, and opened up my first gym in 2013. Went from 1 to 5 to eventually 0 locations, and now Kilo, in the span of, what are we now, 13 years. And
Yes.
made just about every mistake in the book. You know, I say I have a PhD in the School of Hard Knocks, and Teo, as mentioned, wrote along for the journey. So, you know, he'll be able to attest to some of these and experience most of them himself.
I can fact check them.
Yeah, this is not cap, as they say, because you know, I got someone who
none caps here. None.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff you can just Google. Like, a lot of my mistakes were very public and painful, so it's very easily findable with when you search for me. So
absolutely. For the few of you listening who aren't from a CrossFit background, the gym he mentioned is a pretty big CrossFit gym, pretty important one in the community. Same with those coaches and owners he mentioned. So yeah, John went straight to the source, and as he said, learned all the lessons the hard way. Maybe I'll start with one of the harder questions first, right out the gate here. What do you think was the closest? What was the moment where you think you kind of came the closest to throwing in the towel?
2015, for sure. 2015.
And what kept you in? You know, what made you hold on?
Ignorance. I don't know. I mean, we can talk about it. So kind of scripted up my thoughts before this and sent it to Mateo. We want to write it out as like, here are the 5 biggest mistakes. And I think the first one, the most important one, is partner selection, or if you're going to choose a partner at all.
Totally.
Right. And for me personally, I'm someone who likes working with a partner, and I like kind of doing this. You know, I think this journey is lonely enough as is, and as an entrepreneur, I'm sure a lot of you listeners identify with a lot of the kind of, you know, you're trying to help staff members, but they don't see things through the same lens as you, and having a sounding board, being able to kind of like run ideas past somebody who's in the same seat as you, I find that really valuable. But throughout my journey, I made some very terrible partner selection. And the worst of which was this guy who I thought was a mentor. He approached me about expanding and opening a lot of like large, very high-end CrossFit type locations and raising money to do it. And the guy turned out to be a fraud. Like, he embezzled some money from our business bank account. We confronted him about it and ended up going to the FBI with that information. Turns out he had, done some shady stuff with
Done it a couple times.
And I'm now friends with some of the other people, in the survivors group. So
Right.
It's a full circle. Some of them are Kilo clients, which is
There you go.
I think it's true. Suffering does bring people together.
It literally felt like the walls were caving in from both sides. And I've talked publicly about this story before, so I don't want to spend the whole time on it, but it was definitely one of those things where, you come very close to the losing it all after what was like a very, very successful run.
The interesting piece about that, I think, is that John sought out mentorship very early on. It's a minority of gym owners who do seek out business advice in the first place. And I think if they do it, it's usually later in the game, right? Where they're kind of, they're needing a little bit of help and then they start going to look for it. John started out pretty early on looking at different people and approaching them, cold emailing them, looking for business advice in this gym world. And I think that the interesting piece is there, while he was doing all the right things, like, you also have to be careful in the mentors that you select and the people that you look to for advice. There should be a little bit of vetting there as well. I think in this scenario, there's not anything, John or I or anyone could have done really differently, but just to kind of be aware that there are some fraudsters out there claiming they have the secrets and have the knowledge that don't. I mean, there's actually multiple mentors we've had who have gone to jail. So
to be fair, like, it wasn't like something where I blindly entered a partnership with. Like, we engaged in a law firm to hold this thing called a partnership charter process. There's a book called The Partnership Charter, and we hired them to kind of run this diligence process and work out roles and make sure we were compatible. And they didn't see through it. And, we'll talk about what you can learn from this. But as somebody who, even if it's somebody who's been your friend throughout the entire time or somebody you've been working with, once you get to that equity stage, one, like, reference checks, background checks, and simple litigation search. So make sure if there's any outstanding lawsuits this person is in. Some partners go as far as to share like tax returns, so you can finances to make sure this person isn't into any type of stuff that they're not supposed to be in. They are who they say they are. There's plenty of partnership mistakes that aren't like choosing, like, kind of 101 is like, don't pick a fraud. So we're very high on, there's more nuanced ones, like, you don't want a partner who does the exact same thing you do in the business and has the exact same skill set you do. Like, there are definitely more nuanced takes here. But for this entire episode, Teo and I are going to speak from experiences and mistakes we made. As far as my partnership with Mateo, which has now lasted, I don't know, 10, 11 years.
10 years, over 10 years.
We do very different roles and serve very different functions in the business. So, like, we don't have that problem.
I guess before we move on, there was one other partner probably of note that I think you're probably alluding to. This was during an expansion. We were opening 3 gyms at once, and we decided to basically assign an operating partner who would manage and be on site for these gyms. And yeah, we picked one that didn't quite work out, right, John?
Yeah, so I think the idea there was this person would move from the city, which is where he was at the time, to the suburbs, which is where this particular gym was located. And we had conversations about it, but there wasn't any type of like it was a tacit agreement. And then when the gym, sometime between the signing of the lease and when the gym opened, he got his hands on like a rent control department in New York City and said, hey, I'm not moving, which turned out to be a problem because this person didn't have reliable transportation and wasn't in, a comfortable position to get to work on time, which obviously led to a bunch of issues when trying to get a new gym off of the ground. I think when you're creating your partnership agreements, if there are kind of things that you expect to happen in order for the business to function properly, like, they need to be papered, even if it's something like lifestyle stuff like, hey, the expectation is you move within 5 minutes of this gym. That was a big mistake that we made, and one that we ended up having to pay for by backfilling and trying to float this gym while opening 2 others, which was a nightmare.
Making that bad hire, it also affects the rest of the business. And if you have other locations or other things in your ecosystem, all those things can be dragged down by just this one hire, this one mistake.
And I think it's worth mentioning, like, the way we would do our agreements when we were opening up a new location. So we mentioned we had 5. Mateo and I would put some money in, and then the operating partner, so the person who's going to be the GM, was also expected to put money in so they'd have skin in the game. It wasn't just like sweat equity. In this individual instance, this person, like, the money was basically gifted to him by a member versus him having to like put that money in. Given a mulligan, I would only choose a partner who was financially stable enough to, we're not talking like a large amount of money. It was like $10,000, $20,000, something along those lines. I would have wanted someone financially stable enough to make that commitment to the business without having to have it gifted, because the fact that it was gifted, he didn't feel like it was his. It was the same thing as not having skin in the game, which I think is essential when you're choosing an operator for a gym location.
So, John, in a couple sentences here, what did we learn from these hiring and partnership mistakes?
Partnership is a marriage. You should treat it like one, and you should run way more diligence than you seek. If there are any yellow or red flags, you should explore them, and don't rush into it.
You should pick your people like your profit depends on it, because guess what, gym owner? It does. Hey, gym owners, are you looking for a way to generate more leads, close more sales, and increase client retention? Introducing Kilo. We are a software company that gives gym owners the tools they need to increase revenue and run a successful gym. With Kilo, you get a beautifully designed website to capture more leads, an integrated marketing automation platform to increase sales, and our gym management software, so you can add new client memberships, process payments, and organize your class schedule. If you're ready to upgrade your gym management software, book a call at usekilo.com. The next thing I think we want to discuss was location. Picking a location, obviously, is a very important piece in the business, but also just, dealing with operating in an area where there's other businesses, other residential areas, all kind of next to you, your neighbors, right? We opened in pretty large markets. We were in New York City. We were in Hoboken, New Jersey, which is basically just another borough that's not a borough of New York, right? These are expensive, challenging markets. So maybe walk us through some of the zoning issues you faced while trying to operate in these locations.
Yes, and highly, highly regulated. I would say they're not. Any large city in the Northeast is not going to be a business-friendly environment. In any urban area, there are important considerations. So zoning is a huge one. Where Hoboken is a town with kind of interesting zoning, which was where I opened my first gym and my third gym, and I tried to bop around and open a couple other, or expand into other ones. Didn't work out. Like, if you have zoning variant, like if your location requires a zoning variance, this is something that can take 6 months of additional time that you're paying rent on, and upwards of $50,000 to $100,000. In New York, they had this weird thing called a PCE, which is a physical culture establishment permit, which was a permit from, I believe, the 1950s to make sure that gyms, massage parlors weren't actually brothels. And in New York, that process could take a year to 2 years and required expediters and plans and permit, like this huge loop that you would need to jump through. Very expensive, and stuff that a lot of first time or inexperienced operators might run into. Another one that happened to us is we got sued by our neighbors because we were CrossFit gym. We made noise. They didn't like that noise. And the crazy part is we had rented the space. The building next door to us sold. They had knocked down that building and they built 2 luxury condos. And the people who moved into the new condos were able to hear the stuff and like the weights dropping or whatever. And since the guy who bought the penthouse was a fancy lawyer, they came after us. It is a huge pain in the ass, and something that you wouldn't expect to deal with, and something that maybe I wouldn't have had to deal with had I selected a better location. Another thing with that specific location and the town of Hoboken in general, if you're somebody listening to this, opening a gym in Hoboken, it's like Hoboken is designed like a bowl and it's surrounded by water on like 3 sides. When it rains pretty hard, it just like floods.
Or just when it rains.
It just rains. Like there's just like, and it's like not even just like water pulling from the rain. It's like it's like sewage backflow. And that stuff loved getting into my gym, which required, a call to serve pro at an inconvenient time and at an inconvenient price. Another thing that is a red flag is, so we had 5 gyms that we spoke about. 4 of them were commercially successful. We sold them. We made money on the exit. Everybody was happy. The one that was unsuccessful was the partner we spoke about. So we selected the wrong operator. And the second thing we did there is we had selected the wrong location. And what I mean by that is we rented a space that was previously a gym and had failed as a gym. Don't do that. Like when you're operating, things are going well, you think you have that sauce, and maybe you do. To be fair, we did that with another location. That location worked really well. But I think in general, if a place does not work well as a gym, it will continue to not work well as a gym in the future. And you should bias for locations that are either new or my preferred, which is buying a successful gym.
The one that did work was breaking even, or basically breaking even. So I think there is a difference where that one was existing and probably could have continued to exist. Whereas the one that failed, it was, I think there were like a couple gyms that had gone through that space and failed. And we tried our hand at it and also failed. So there you go. Is there anything you would advise for gym owners that, if they're looking at a lease agreement, like how would you pressure test a lease agreement? Or are there any clauses or things that you should look out for that maybe had you known about before, we could have avoided some of these issues?
Sublease or assignment flexibility, for sure. So meaning if any of these things happen, you want to be able to get out of the lease, or you want to be able to assign the lease to another spot. So when we were going through the lawsuit with our neighbors for the noise, the result of that lawsuit was this court order where like we had to keep the noise behind this like decibel limit. And were we to exceed this decibel limit, like there would be all these restrictions that fell on the gym. And then it would like forbid the landlord from like leasing the space to a gym or the space ever operating as a gym again, which is crazy, like a crazy thing to think about, that like some judge could dictate the use of whatever the building may be. Had I not had an assignment clause, I might have been on the hook for what was a 5-year lease at the time and in a position where it couldn't operate as a gym, but I would still be on the hook for it. And so I would have had to turn it into a daycare or a coffee shop or something else, some business I had no clue about. And because I had an assignment clause, I was able to assign that space and we were able to find one that could function as a gym. And so crisis avoided there. I think if you have any type of space that's located that needs some type of zoning variance or a huge build out, to whatever extent you can get the landlord to handle that for you. This is a lot more likely if you're dealing with like a big landlord. So throughout the process of us doing deals in different spaces, like larger landlords will typically do some of the build out for you. They have connections. They can get it done faster, cheaper. They can go cut through the red tape, especially if they're developers. So a lot of times for a decent tenant, they're willing to shoulder some of that risk. We've also talked to people in Gym World who had success like making the landlord pay for everything and do all the build out and then just adding it as like a monthly expense to the lease. So basically financing the build out back to the gym owner. And so if I was in any type of situation that was more complicated than like build out some bathrooms, roll out some flooring, and let's go, I would definitely try and put myself in a position where I could get the landlord to take a lot of the upfront risk. So I'm not on the hook paying rent for a space for 6, 12, 18 months that I can't use because we're sitting in some city, the city is making us march through a bunch of red tape.
Well, there you have it, gym owner. I think the lesson there is pay close attention to your location and the lease that you're signing, because leases, your location, and your landlord, they can kill your business faster than any competition that's opening up down the street. While we're talking about locations, while we're talking about leases, something else that gym owners often question, especially successful ones, are when do I open my second one? When do I open my third? How do I get to 10? Should I be expanding? All those questions come up often, especially on Gym World too. After we turn off the recording with the gym owner we're speaking to, we'll often talk about, oh, are you going to open the next one? And it's always a separate follow-up conversation that happens. So we did that, right, John? You opened 2 by the time I joined the party, and then together we opened up 3 more to varying degrees of success, I think. So I guess walk people through it. What happened there? How did we end up in a situation where we opened 3 gyms in the same month in 2017?
I'll first give context on these expansion from 1 to 2. So for me personally, I always just wanted to open kind of like a large flagship gym. Being in Hoboken, like, it's a very space constrained city, so you can't just like knock down the wall next door when you need more space. And we opened at like the best possible time. Like, we just rode the CrossFit wave from 2013 to whenever it peaked. So like when I opened my gym, I had over 100 members. When I opened my second gym, which was like 6 or 7 months later, we pre-sold like close to $250,000 in memberships, and it was like slam packed before we even opened the door. So it worked out for me in that instance, right? But we've talked to plenty of gym owners that it certainly hasn't. And then when I did my second round of expansion, going from 2 to 5, that was way more stressful and less enjoyable of an experience because, I think we just bit off more than we could chew. In our case, we had a bunch of, like we talked about in 2015, I had this partner. We had done all this hiring to expand, and then none of that materialized because the guy turned out to not be who he said he was. And so we scrapped all those plans. And so the business was, we're just trying to keep the business alive, afloat, and get back to baseline. But we were like really well staffed. We had incredible talent at these 2 small locations. So like at the time, it was just my 2 original locations that were still working, and we were just punching above our weight in terms of the coaches we had. We had this idea where, hey, let's make some of them operating partners, let them open up their own locations, and kind of do a smaller version of what the initial plan was, which was just opening up a bunch of really nice flagship locations. And the problem with that is, like, there are certainly people who are able to do that, right? You hear like the Solid Core founder talking about how they went from like 4 to 100 locations in whatever 3 or 4 years, or and there are certainly stories of people doing that successfully. But I do think there is an element of timing and luck. Having opened up a CrossFit gym in 2013 versus then opening up another one in 2017, it was very clear that there was a difference in terms of the market, the trend, the perception, the time in which you were riding it. I think it's like the difference between opening up a like cold plunge recovery type facility 2 years ago versus opening up one today. Like, I just think it's a very different market. What we see and what we instruct people to do at Two Brain, which is a gym mentorship company that I'm a partner in, is we typically want to see like their first unit doing just incredibly well. And we want them doing nothing for 6 months with a full management team in place, making a market wage, like everyone, their staff members making a market wage. And ideally, we're looking for like 20 to 30,000 in net owner benefit in that location at a time. So that means like you are pocketing as the owner 20 to 30,000 in more or less mailbox money for half a year before going and opening up the location. Additionally, you want to have like repeatable systems. So I think one of the mistakes that we made is each gym was a different concept rather than just having like CrossFit XYZ and making 5 different CrossFit XYZs. Like, we let each operating partner kind of put their own touch and pizzazz and flair on their location. And then finally, like, you need to be okay with the profit of your first location decreasing by like 50%. So you want to have like a large cash buffer. You need to be financially comfortable with half your money going away, especially if there's any type of like shared staff, because you're going to be distracted and your team is going to be distracted. And it's kind of like the amount of attention you give one kid, then you have that second kid. The only child who's getting all the attention is not getting all the attention anymore, and they start to make a fuss about it. And what wasn't a problem then becomes a problem. And I think there's a semblance of truth to that when opening up multiple gym locations.
I guess if you could go back, John, would you have done it any differently? Would you have not opened those three? Would you have opened, maybe, as you said, maybe would have stuck to one concept? What would you have done differently?
It's tough. It's tough to quarterback it, from the
Because it got
future.
us here, It got us here. It got
Like
us to where we needed to
it all
be.
worked out. Like that gym ownership experience time, like set the foundation and made connections and helped me learn a lot for this second phase of entrepreneurship I'm in, and I'm able to move a lot faster. And you kind of made all your dumb mistakes young. And so it's made this part of my life a lot more enjoyable, because I got that all out of the way. But yeah, if I was somebody who was hell bent on opening up multiple locations, I probably would have just focused on buying existing gyms that were doing well and just paying a premium for that. Gyms don't trade at a huge multiple, like maybe 2 to 3 times earnings. To get a gym to, especially a coaching gym, to 20, 30,000 in take home pay is very rare. Like less than 1% of gym owners do that. And so if you can buy one of those for 2 to 3 years of the profit and put yourself in a position where you have a good location, you have a good membership base, you have good staff, like, it's like going into the game on third base. You pay up for it on the front end, but which we will probably talk about later. There's plenty of like programs through the SBA and stuff like that that allow you to purchase businesses like that for not very much money down, and it removes what I think is like the riskiest part of the journey, which is like going from lease signing to break even, which is like that is just the grind.
Yeah, and I think too, like, as you kind of mentioned, we were facing two problems. One, we had some leftover equipment from this partner who ended up being a fraud. We had some extra equipment, and we had staff that was kind of ready to level up in some way. And so I think, maybe we rushed this part of it because we felt like we had to put this equipment somewhere and we had to put the staff somewhere who was kind of ready for the next thing, and we wanted to make sure we retain them. So, I mean, I think the lesson there is, expanding to a second location or expanding in general. This is something that you should be hitting the kind of benchmarks that John was saying, and you should not be expanding to solve some problems that you feel like you may be having, whether it's staffing, whether it's just something's missing in your heart, like you want to expand because you need to fill a hole. Yeah, it's not something that should be a fix for problems. It should be something that, you and the rest of the business, everything is, you're ready for it.
Yeah, we hear like two common things from gym owners. Like some gym owners expand just because they're bored. Like
Right.
they'll get
That's
their
what I was trying
business
to allude
to like
to, yes.
like they'll get to the finish line, right, where the business is paying them and it's not stressful, and they finally like for most of them they set out what they initially like wanted to achieve, which was like a good reliable form of income and making impact in the community. And just from like the scars of getting to that point, like you just want to tinker and mess with stuff and take action, because that's like what you've been doing. For most gym owners, that's a 2-3 year grind to get to that point. You're just hell bent on breaking something. And so a lot of people will expand and break something that way. Or some people will just do the math. It's like, oh, all right, so this location, I'm taking home 20,000 a month from this location. I open a second location.
I'll make 40,000 a month.
Right. And so that's the absolute wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of gym owners who get into, and myself included, right? Like I was doing numbers close to that in my original location, and you don't really know, especially if you're newer and you haven't been following along the industry. You listen to Gym World, so dear listener. But for most people, like they don't know how rare that is or how lucky that is, and how few people reach kind of like a 20, 30,000 take home pay with a GM in place, with full-time staff in place. And like that is winning the game of gym ownership. Like if you can get there, you are in the top 1%. To double down is ambitious, and a lot of times doesn't pan out the way it papers out when you're running your little models and stuff. I think most of the people we speak with who are multi-location like regret it. I don't know. Do you agree with that statement, Matteo?
It certainly feels like more people, yes, regret it.
Even the ones who are making money, like we talk to people who are making way more than 20, 30,000 a month and doing really well, but like they're still just kind of like,
Even people who are making money with a larger location. I just did an episode where they're like, yeah, I wish we could go back to this. We have too much space. I wish we could go back to the small one we had when we first started. Smaller is better sometimes.
That's what she said. That's what she said.
Let's talk about pricing, right? Packaging and pricing. Something that I think a lot of gym owners struggle with, especially when they're first starting out, is figuring out what they should charge. And I think that's where a lot of mistakes are made early on in the gym ownership journey, that people spend a lot of time digging themselves out of that hole. And I think we made one of those as well. John, how would you advise a gym owner who's just opening up to structure their founding member pricing or their first member pricing?
yeah, I would just tell you not to lock in the rate for life. That was the mistake we made. So luckily we never had the problem of like setting our rates at half the market rate or something like that. Like we talked to gym owners who just like their main strategy is just undercutting everybody else. And I always felt comfortable selling and I believed in what we were going to be offering. So we didn't have that problem, but I wanted to make just like an awesome offer that just got a bunch of people in the door as quickly as possible. So I did like this paid in full deal. And if you did that, it gave you a pretty substantial discount. I said I wouldn't change for life, but like that was a terrible mistake because, you know, your rent changes. People like getting paid more. Your insurance gets more expensive. You know, it's everything gets more expensive over time. You have set capacity. There's only a certain amount of people who can be in that gym. And so if 60% of those slots are filled by people who are not paying the rack rate or what is like the market rate at the time, that is going to severely impact your business. And most of that discount is your profit. That's your take home. And so I made the mistake of locking people in. I had to go back and say, hey, we can't do it at this price anymore in order for this to stay a sustainable and healthy business. And people hated it.
A lot of screenshots of like, nope, this is the email you sent. I have it right here. And being pretty angry about this change that we had to make.
Which understandably, like if I was a consumer in the same situation, I would be mad at me too. And so
Yep.
I don't like, it was deserved. It was a mistake on my part. If you are somebody who's doing a founding member type thing, make it time bound. So, hey, it's your rate for a year, something like that. Don't discount at all. That would be even better. But if you are going to do some type of like paid in full thing to get some cash up front so you can expand faster, which, you know, isn't a terrible idea in most cases, keep it time bound. And one of the things that I've seen gym owners do that is cool is like they just have like an inflationary rate increase. So like when you sign up, they say, hey, like we raise the rates 3% every year. So if you stick with us for a year, like 1 year from now, your rate goes up 3%. And if you set that expectation at the beginning, like no one's going to be like, I don't believe in inflation and leave because of that. And so you get through a lot of those hard conversations. You never have to do a pretty aggressive rate increase, which, you know, we've seen some gym owners have to do because, you know, they're weeks away from shutting down their door.
Well, yeah. I mean, any advice there for people who, you know, it's now they're facing that moment. They're going to have to raise rates on loyal clients. Is there any advice there on how to approach that scenario?
I mean, just be honest, like be as transparent as you can about the situation. I tried to phrase it like, hey, here are all these improvements we've made since we opened, and because of that, we're going to raise your rates. Like, probably just should have been like, hey, everything's really expensive right now. And this is a business and we need to make money. I can't have 70% of the members on some type of discounted rate. And I think they would have been a little more forgiving of that instead of, you know, I think the saying's like, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. So yeah, I would just try and be as honest and candid. And most of these people, if you're a coaching based gym, have a relationship with you. Like they understand you're a person, whatever. I was less active in the location Mateo was in, so I went there less often, had less of a relationship. So it's, you know, it was much easier to like, I was much more hateable to that group of people. And that was where that price increase was definitely more hated than the one I was more present, for sure.
So the lesson there, gym owner, don't lock in your rates for life. Offer time-bound promos. If you're going to offer promos, make them time-bound. And set expectations early on about the way you set your rates. If you let them know up front that you're going to raise rates every year, it's going to be a lot easier when it comes time to renew. So to close it all out, John, let's talk about something we didn't actually get around to doing, but something that I know we aspired to do during this gym ownership journey. Let's talk a little bit about real estate, a topic I think that's near and dear to your heart. What are the pros and cons of being in a situation like that, where you're locked into this lease, you're trying to open a business, and you don't own the land it's on?
I mean, it's the most common situation. Like, most gym owners do not own their building. There are plenty of successful gym owners who don't own their building. And if you're somebody who's like hyper scaling, like you deliberately do not want to, like, owning your building is a bad strategy. But if you're somebody who's going to be around for a while, like, I do think there's, in one location, like, your model's pretty set, I do think there is a ton of value in owning your building. There are tax advantages, your expenses are capped, you never have to worry about your landlord jerking you around, you have long-term asset appreciation. To be honest, a lot of the most successful exits we've talked about on Gym World were people like selling their building. So they made way more selling the building than they ever did operating the gym. And there are numerous episodes of people taking home multi 7-figure paychecks on their way out, just because they bought their building. I mean, the most ridiculous one was the Indianapolis guys, Jared Beachco, were like, I think they put down like $30,000 and ended up with like their appreciation after a couple of years was like 1.8 million. So, and all the benefits of owning the building along the way. So, and there are plenty of such stories like that. So for us, it was difficult. Like, I call it one of the biggest mistakes, is because, like, we never were able to do it. Like, New York is an incredibly challenging market to, like, you can't just like buy a building in New York if you're like a mere mortal. They're just too expensive. Hoboken, similar, you're looking $4 or $5 million for a building, which was more than I could have, like, than my gym could have ever handled. But like, given a mulligan, I probably would have opted for a market where I could have owned the real estate and own the building. If you are somebody who's not in a position to own a building, but maybe your landlord is open to it, like, some things worth talking about is you can build in like a option to purchase at the end of your lease, or you can put in like a right of first refusal. So if the building ever does go for sale, like, you are the person who gets to buy it, or you get to match whatever offer they get. All that stuff, a lot of landlords are willing and able to do. But yeah, it creates a lot of security. And then the SBA here in the US, there's a lot of programs that allow you to buy buildings for as little as like 5% down. For some of them, you can lease part of the building. So like up to, I think it's like 40% of the building you can lease out to another tenant. So you can, make money in real estate while housing your gym, which is, an awesome strategy, and one I wish I'd taken advantage of, especially because you look back during that time, like, that was a great time for, like, real estate appreciated a ton from that 2013 to when we got out 2019 period. Like, it was a good run.
Well, certainly easier said than done, but there's definitely some ways to make it happen. There's lots of programs out there. You can start forming relationships with bankers, reach out to brokers. And yeah, the SBA is a great option. There's plenty of episodes we have on here where people took that route. So if you're curious, check out Gym World Worldwide. Check out the previous episodes to learn more about that. Lots of lessons learned through our journey in the gym world. Is there anything that kind of shaped how you hire, how you price, or how you treat the business we're both a part of now, Kilo?
Yeah, there is no landlord. There is no landlord.
That's
There is
true.
no zoning.
That's true.
And like I mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast, I am located in the great state of Florida, which is a much better climate to do business in. So I'm certainly grateful for my time in the New York area. And I think that opened up a lot of doors and opportunities that wouldn't have otherwise been open. But yeah, I like I like being able to scale a business that is not reliant on a landlord, a town, or anything like that, which probably isn't the most tactical answer for a gym owner listening to this at home. So I don't know, Teo, what do you think? How did it shape? How you were in the journey? What's something that we can convey to the listener here to maybe give them some alpha for sitting through this whole podcast?
Yeah, I think what I wish I had spent more time on is hiring and firing, picking people, right? Have a process or reach out for help. I mean, we've had gym owners on here who've had a lot of success with recruiters. There are agencies now that exist that didn't exist before for finding coaches, for finding GMs. But yeah, I think the ones that keep me up on night, keep me up at night were the people mistakes. And then the other piece I think is systems and the model, right? I think there are things we know now about ways to structure classes, ways to structure the service, ways to structure training that we didn't know back then that I maybe would have applied had I known. Like, I think the large group model was very difficult, especially in our market. I think that's something to keep in mind is like, you got to pick a model that fits your market. So if you're trying to run a large group CrossFit style, a gym in a location where space is at a premium, maybe it's not such a good idea. Maybe instead find a model where you can make a lot of money in a small amount of space.
Yeah, if you look through New York and the CrossFits that were there, it's a graveyard. There are a lot of bodies of CrossFit affiliates that were in Manhattan. And if you are if you are a CrossFit affiliate that's been doing it for 10, 15 plus years and you're still in there, and there are a few, and some of them are Kilo clients, give yourself a pat on the back. Like that's as hard as it gets. That is
True.
There is definitely truth to the statement. Like, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Like, that is a very difficult operating environment. But I don't know about you, Teo, but I have put a lot of thought into, like, if I was to open a gym again, what the model would look like, what exactly I would do. So listeners, if that's something that you would be interested in, let us know. And
Oh yeah, that's a teaser. That's what we call a little teaser there. Keep you
if they
hooked
want
for
it,
next time.
they want it. We got to talk to a lot of gym owners, see a lot of models. We got to peek at a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
We get some good metrics through Kilo. What is Kilo actually for people who aren't familiar with?
Well, that's a good question, John. So here at Kilo, we offer websites, marketing automation, and gym management software for you, dear gym owner, to help you capture more leads, book more sales consultations, and turn those people into paying clients. Once they're in your system, we want to make sure you have the data to help you make the best decisions for your gym. So if you need some help with that, give us a call at usekilo.com. We'll set you up with a website, our gym lead machine software, and our gym management software to help you get where you need to be. And so you can avoid all the mistakes that we made.
I was going to say, this is the biggest mistakes episode. Like, maybe we'll do a biggest wins, since it's not all doom and gloom. So we don't come off as huge idiots. But the one thing we were good at, we were good at getting leads. We were great at getting bodies in the door. And with Kilo, you don't have to make all these $100,000 plus mistakes. You can literally just buy Kilo. And you get all that experience wrapped up into a nice little done for you package.
So there you go, gym owner. If you got some value out of this, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and share with a gym owner in need. If you think they're about to make one of these mistakes, send them this episode. Anything else for our listeners before we send them on their way, John?
I do think there is a lot of value in here. I know we've been kind of joking around a little bit, but a big part of the game is just continuing to play it. And so these are the most expensive, these are the largest, these are the most catastrophic ones that we made. And I will say, like, you are more likely to make a catastrophic mistake when you are doing well. You don't make these mistakes when you are doing poorly. So maybe if you are a gym owner out there who is crushing it, who's doing well, who's looking for the next project, it's like the same thing as investing. When you're on a hot streak, that's when you're going to take your biggest L. So much of the game is protecting your risk, mitigating your downside. So if you got a hot hand, just talk to us. just shoot me a DM, and maybe I can help you out, because I don't want you to make any of the mistakes I had to make.
And with that, dear listener, we will bid you farewell. We love you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.